There is no Bible written on how to bring up a child. If you see Lord Ram and Lord Krishna, both were raised in two different environments. There's nothing like a perfect parent and nothing like a perfect bringing up.
I remember when my daughter was born, the first milestone which I waited was, when is she actually going to make eye contact with me?
And she's made that first contact with you, which
Wow.
is an emotional contact at that point of time. The child has been in the womb and dark womb for almost 9 months. He's
Right.
not adapted. You are in airplane mode, and then you're coming out and you're trying to find your Wi-Fi.
The first time my daughter flipped over and I was jumping with joy. I called everyone in the home. Look, she rolled, she rolled. Such a brilliant concept which you just explained, that if you could mash it with your hands, you could mash it with your gums as well. And as parents, we need to be aware, we need to be consulting our doctor, our expert, and then just doing it and constantly just evaluating it, and I believe having fun.
Absolutely. And food should be fun. Just be there for the child. The child would love your presence, and that is all that is asking for.
They say the days are long, but the years are short. If we consider the first 30 days of motherhood as a sprint for survival, then definitely the rest of the year is a marathon of transformation. From the first time the baby tracks your face to the moment they take those wobbly tiny steps, every day feels like a new chapter which we read one day at a time. Today, we are joined by a true titan in the world of child healthcare. With a legacy spanning over 25 plus years, he's been the guiding light of thousands and thousands of families, helping them navigate the complexities of neonatology and pediatrics. He's the medical director at Motherhood Hospital. Dr. Sanjay Wazir, it's a privilege to have you on the Motherhood Blueprint.
Thank you, Barkha, for inviting me and having me over. As a parent, when I had my baby, at that time I was handling a hospital and neonatology and NICU and all sick babies, and I had a decent experience. But when the nurse handed the baby to me, I mean, for that one moment, I was completely stunned. And I still remember that like stunned moment till date after 15 years as well.
I remember when my daughter was born, the first milestone which I waited was, when is she actually going to make eye contact with me? So when does that happen?
The first eye contact happens at the time of the birth itself. When you look into the eyes of the child, you probably may not see her winking back, but she's seeing your face in a black and white, in a 2-dimension. And she's made that first contact with you, which is an emotional contact at that point of time. Now, when you say, when do they reply back in the sense of a smile, that's what you call a smile responsiveness. That generally happens by around 8 weeks or so, and up to 12 weeks as well. When you smile back, the child smiles back.
Yeah, and I think that's a very beautiful thing which you said. And when you were describing this, I remember the first time when I saw my daughter in the OT, and that was a very beautiful feeling. And yes, I remember that tiny fraction of second wherein she was there, and it was, okay, this is my mom, and for me, okay, this is my daughter, this is my world. And that's a very, very precious feeling. So when the baby starts making the eye contact at like 10 to 12 weeks, and this is kind of 3 months of age, what other developmental milestones should we be expecting at this phase as a parent?
When you look at development, you have to understand certain principles. Like here, there is white matter development, which is going to happen first, which means the motor control, which means first the head control will happen, then the trunk control will happen, and then it will be the leg control.
Legs.
So that's why the child first holds the neck, then the whole sits up, and then starts standing and walking. You know, so there's a progression to this. Now, generally, you would see a children around 3 months of age having a decent neck control. By 5 months of age, they have a decent and nearly complete head control. 5 months, they should be able to sit with some support because the truncal control is not developing, and by 8 months, they should be able to sit without support. Generally, the children should be able to walk independently by 18 months, but it could vary from 9 months to 18 months. But somebody who's done it at 10 months does not make him an Olympic runner. Even if your child does not walk by 16 months, you are not late.
Exactly, that is my question. When I do shoots with the babies, And there are so many times wherein a parent would come in, the baby would be 7 months or 7.5 months, and she would be like, but he hasn't even started sitting yet. Is he facing any developmental delay? And that kind of anxiety builds in the entire environment. So I'm sure you would be getting a lot of patients with respect to the same question. What's your advice on to this?
So, as I said, when it comes to progression of milestones, there is a pace, and the pace is different for every single child. Now, imagine your children going to school today, and then they have a maths class, and they also have a science, and they have Hindi. And if they are doing excellent in one, and they're doing reasonably okay in other, and they're failing in one subject. Now, these are three different things. Now, if you start comparing somebody else's child is doing good in mathematics and my child has scored less than that, then I'm putting anxiety into my own system. My anxiety should be around some subject which my child is not performing, even passing marks.
Right.
Okay. So when it comes to development, we generally tell parents that you need to look at what is classified as delay. By a particular age, which I said, like for example, sitting without support, by 8 months, 90% of the children should be sitting. Now, there may be 5 or 10% of children who may do it at 9 months also,
right.
But 90% would do it by 8 months. Now, if the child does it at 5 months, 6 months, 7 months, or 7.5 months, I'm okay. Like 8 months, I'm still okay. But if it is 9 months, I'm still okay to evaluate. I'm a little concerned, but I'm not that this is delayed.
Understood.
And then once I've looked at like other parameters and then say, okay, this is definitely non-progressive, that the child is not even sitting up or sitting without support by say 12 months. Now that I will classify that as a delay. We'll say caution means that this has to be done by this time. Is not doing, please evaluate. Do not really label.
Exactly.
And then keep on seeing, review your diagnosis after a month and then label. Not at the first instance.
I think that puts us as parents to so much ease, because when we now understand that, okay, till 8 months the baby has to sit. If the baby is not sitting, we do not need to worry. All we need to do is reach out to our expert and they will evaluate. And I think us as parents, us as entire society, we need to stop labeling the children also into that category. I would want to ask this question about sleep routine, which I am sure, okay, I can see the smile on your face with respect to this. So suddenly something happens and the baby stops sleeping, or it becomes very unpredictable. So is there any biological change happening in the body right now?
Yes, to understand that concept, you need, the child has been in the womb and dark womb for almost 9 months. He is not adapted. You are in airplane mode. And then you're coming out and you're trying to find your Wi-Fi, trying to set, like, then you are telling them, okay, this is the Wi-Fi connection. It is best established in your crib at around this time, and you're trying to establish a routine. But we also have to keep in mind that as the child is growing, the number of hours that the child needs to sleep, also requirement goes down. And we say the newborn should sleep for 18 to 22 hours, but that's not the truth. Now, some children may sleep for 14 hours. It is a refreshing sleep at the end of the day what matters most. Most children would sleep around 16 to maybe 18, 20 hours in a day, but the same does not apply to a 2-month-old child, same doesn't apply to a 3-month child. Right. There is a concept called a sleep regression, where you probably would see
heard that word a lot.
Right. But let me just not confuse you with those kind of biologies, because it is going to happen. But if you say, okay, there is going to be some unpredictability in the child, because child is a human being like you and me, and it's not designed to behave like this is 8 o'clock, you sleep, and you're going to get up at 5 o'clock because the alarm is going to go off. So there is a change because the growth is happening fast, and sometimes there are growth spurts where you probably need more feed at that point of time. You run through those growth spurts and you find the child is hungry all the time, is probably wanting to feed at most of the times even in odd hours, and the next week probably the growth spurt has gone down, and you probably see he's sleeping more peacefully, and you attribute it to the new lullaby that you learn, and you're like, okay, this was my achievement. It was baby's achievement, not yours, by the way. But
you took all the pride away, sir, by saying this. That's a very, very amazing way to put it, that take it as it comes, try not labeling it, and have fun in this growth phase rather than surrounding yourself with a lot of anxiety. Right?
Anxiety happens when we're trying to put a baby into a system, where it's like, which is a wrong way to look at it. It is better to see what system suits the baby. So that you can only, and that cannot be one document. And that's why today, after so many years of human existence, there is no Bible written on how to bring up a child. Even like, if you see Lord Ram and Lord Krishna, both were raised in two different environments because none of their mothers knew how to raise the perfect child. And there's nothing like a perfect parent and nothing like a perfect bringing up. So you need to study your baby, enjoy the moment, and see. My baby tends to sleep more in the night. Say, for example, a child sleeps at 2 o'clock every single day. Now that's something that you do not want because that disturbs the circadian rhythm.
This instance happened with me, and since I do a lot of baby shoots, there was this very amazing client of mine, and the baby was close to around 3.5 months when she came in. She mentioned that she was kind of being told that they should be giving in cow milk to the baby, and when she refused, because of course her doctor refused her to do so, the parents would say that we did give you cow milk when you were a baby, you grew up fine, so nothing is going to happen to your baby. What's your take on this, sir?
Before that, I would like to get an anecdote of my own professional kind of an experience. When I did something, I went to my boss and said, I've done this X thing, and he said it's wrong, and I said no, but it worked. He said experience is an ability to commit the same mistake over and over again with increasing confidence till it backfires. So we say, okay, we have done it, and we hear it umpteen number of times from the parents or the grandparents. So we have done it. Now, was that a mistake or that was a scientific advancement? That's something that we need to look at. Now, today, if you look up any paper, there is saying that introduction of cow's milk before first 6 months in Finland led to increased incidence of an insulin-dependent diabetes, mellitus, type 1 diabetes. There are umpteen number of papers which suggest that introduction of cow's milk is associated with increased incidence of cow's milk allergy. Also, it is associated with iron deficiency anemia. Okay, and we all understand that iron deficiency anemia leads to a lower IQ later in when you grow up.
Right.
So when we look at those kind of scientific evidence, we are telling parents that like introduction of cow's milk is not a safe option. Now, if you see the amount of protein, even if you do not want to believe the scientific paper, you believe nature. Okay.
Right.
Now, nature is like cow's milk has 3 or 3.3 grams protein in 100 ml, whereas human milk has 1.1. Okay.
Right.
Now, we have to understand why God made that difference. Because if it wanted, it could have given the same amount of protein to the mother as well.
Exactly.
Right? Now, since that protein is not easily digested by the human baby, especially the kidneys, the renal solute load increases tremendously. We have enough reason on a logical basis, natural basis, and scientific basis to believe that cow's milk is not something which is right for the baby. And if your grandparents still insist on that, it is important to have a conversation, because it is not about if I tell you your thinking is wrong and I don't discuss any further. Now you're challenging my belief that I've been holding for maybe 50 years and decades of my child, and it's like, okay, if one day if your child is born, and then that's the most common reason for the conflict. आपको पता है कि हमने बच्चे नहीं पाले.
Exactly, this is something जो हमेशा सुनते हैं.
And मैं तो रोज ही सुन रहा हूँ because sometimes the grandmother and the mother both are there. After a while, you pitch in this thing, you slowly grill it, and it's like, in fact, the formula is also made from the cow's milk, but it is broken down, it is tailored to make it suitable for human baby. It's still not as great as the breast milk, but it is closer to the breast milk than it is to the cow's milk.
Okay, so much safer, much curated, and then we know that what exactly has to go. That's the nutrition which the baby is getting.
Correct, because we, after so many years of research, we understand what is good. And again, as I said, it is never going to be like as great as the breast milk, because breast milk is something which is a golden nectar.
Yeah.
And we as humans cannot be smarter than nature, so we will always take a back seat. So formula we have designed is going to be lesser than the breast milk, but it is still better than giving direct
cows milk. Completely understood, sir, and thank you. It does make a lot of sense when we get to know the scientific fact and the way you've told in a logical fact as well, and the point which Dr. Sanjay just mentioned, that try to have a conversation, try to take your parents along with you to your expert, to the doctor, so that they also understand. And here we are working together to create a beautiful environment for the baby and not creating another battlefield at home.
As it is, our hands are full when the baby is born, so you don't want to create another battlefield for sure.
Oh, for sure. So, sir, coming to another question, I remember the first time my daughter flipped over and I was jumping with joy. I called everyone in the home. Look, she rolled. So when does that actually happen? I understand you explained it very beautifully. That was the next stability happens and then the trunk. So is this a part of the trunk being stable when the baby starts flipping over?
It's a matter of the trunk getting stronger. Okay, so unless the child is able to sit with some support, the child is not going to roll over, and then the child is going to sit. Once the moment the child is like having a good truncal control, you can sit over completely. Now, flipping is something which is natural to babies, but sometimes some children may take a little, like varies between 5 to 8 months. So 6 months you would expect more children to flip from one side to other, but from back to front might be a little delayed. And in winters and in India, we tend to overload our children with like a lot of sweaters and
Yes.
like jackets and this thing. I mean, you're adding an extra layer of difficulty for them to roll over.
Multiple extra layers of difficulty, I believe.
Yes. So sometimes the children do not really flip over. As I said, it's a milestone to consider, but if your child is sitting without support independently by 7 or 8 months, I will not really give credence to a fact that he is not rolling over.
Does make logical sense. So when does teething usually start? I believe with Dia, she got her first one at 5.5 to close to 6 months. But what's an age when we can expect teething in a child?
Teething is something which usually happens between 6 months to 13 months, but then there are going to be outliers. Some children are even born with a natal tooth out, and there are children who may have slightly delayed at 13 to 15 months also. After 13 months, we call it a delayed tendency. Again, not labeling, with the intent to evaluate whether there is a thyroid or a vitamin D or something which is responsible for bone mineralization, teeth mineralization, is that a little less in the blood and we need to supplement that. But it could vary from all that range.
So during teething, kids tend to get a little uncomfortable. So are there any remedies which you recommend? Of course, medication and everything, if at all needed, we would come to you. But are there any remedies which you would recommend we could do at home to ease the teething pain?
I would like to take this question in two phases. That, like, many times when you see a child putting the hand into the mouth, and we all start assuming and betting on this thing that the child is going to have a teeth. And if you're a mom and if you're family, you can bet on it and win all the bets with the family members, and it's not going to be the teething related. So in the next 1 week, you're not going to have teeth. And it's mouthing. It's like mouthing is a phase where all mammals explore their environment with putting things in the mouth, and because at 4 to 5 months the hand starts like really coming close to the body, and because the tone becomes a little easy and the child puts the things into the mouth. So every time we do not really see, because he's chewing on this, that we need to be really doing something. Okay. Second is that if you have a teething which the child is very uncomfortable, the easiest way is if you have an injury somewhere, what do? You just apply a cold pack.
Right.
So just take something which you put into the chiller fraction or the refrigerator fraction portion of the fridge, and not in the freezer.
Okay.
So you put it, you chill it, but do not freeze it.
Okay.
And then you can let the child bite onto this, so that any injury, any pain, that would reduce. Like any other injury, you
just
probably
like we do a cold
ice
pack.
ice pack. Absolutely. So that's the whole concept. Sometimes some people say, okay, not the teether, and then they use a carrot, for example. Peel the carrot and then just take the thicker part of the carrot and just use that for biting. And those are the things. If your child is really uncomfortable, sometimes the doctor may say apply some kind of local anesthetic gel, but generally we do not really recommend all the time for doing. And if the child is very uncomfortable that particular night or couple of days, you probably would see the child, you can give an ibuprofen, or but that's after discussion with the parent.
Again, after discussion with that expert.
What certainly does not happen, if fever, like which is more than 39 degree or 102, does not happen because of the teething.
Okay.
So if your child is, because that's the commonest myth people carry.
Exactly, I was about to come to this question.
तो fever हो गया तो इस दांत की वजह से है. So if it is mild like 9900, maybe it could be because of teething or not because of teething. But if it is 39 and above, or the child is like having a fever with some other symptoms, then you should probably see your doctor, like in that sense. Similarly, loose motions are often ascribed to teething. The important aspect of care at that point of time is to look after hydration with an ORS, so that loose motions which are happening, the dehydration it is causing, you are supplementing it with some kind of hydration solution. When I started my journey as a pediatrician, I was really against the teething tablets, to the extent that the grandmothers started hating me for challenging belief. We understand these teething tablets are not approved by FDA. US FDA says that teething tablets have been associated with something which is more sinister, something, because if it is a teething tablet which reduces the pain, then it is a painkiller.
Exactly.
If some people say it's calcium, then there is enough calcium in the milk the child is taking.
Precisely.
So what are we giving? Most of the people who give teething tablet to the children even do not know the composition of what it is. So my resistance would still be that the teething tablets should not be part of the teething prescription.
Okay. And I believe you've shared very, very beautiful tips, and with a scientific evidence that whenever we get hurt, all we do is we put an ice pack. And exactly that is what we're supposed to do with the child. But you mentioned that we should not be putting it in the freezer rather than putting it in the chiller. Did you say this because we should be avoiding giving ice or any ice particle to the child?
The idea is that it should be chilled, but soft enough that the child will bite into it.
Right.
If it is ice, it becomes difficult. It might cause more pain. You're biting into an ice, for example, you need strength, but when you have cold, you just apply an ice pack. You don't apply an ice directly.
We don't apply ice directly. So Vidya, what we used to do, there was this small baby towel which we get. I would just wash it and then tie a knot, put it in the freezer for 10-15 minutes, and then just give it to her. So she would just suck onto it, and the water it would be, or the RO water. Is something like that fine too?
Yeah, as long as you're sure about the cleanliness of the towel, yes. I'm quite okay with that. Every day is a new learning. Just I've learned from you. Like a new
Thank you, sir. So India is a very culturally diverse country, and every culture, every religion advocates something new. And now I am going to be asking about solids. That when is actually a right time to start solids for the child?
Irrespective of the cultural diversity that India has, we have a science-based answer to that question, which says that if you have a child on exclusive breastfeeding for the first 6 months, you probably would doing wonders, and you start around 6 months. And again, I want your viewers to understand the logic behind, so that why at 4 or 6 months that you need to do. After 6 months, the breast milk is not enough to take care, even any other milk for that matter, is not good enough to keep pace with the increasing requirement of energy and protein.
Right.
And especially iron and zinc are missing in the milk after 6 months. So you would need to have those supplemented by a diverse diet, which is like looking at protein, fruits, vegetables, and a little bit of energy coming from carbs or fats. For those who are not on exclusive breastfeeding, we tend to start sometimes a little early, between 4 to 6 months, but certainly not before 4 months, because if you do it before 4 months, you probably are likely to encounter more allergies, and that's the science. So you should have started around maybe 16, 17 weeks. And when you start in formula fed babies, because you anyway started with a foreign protein, so you say, okay, you're okay to start at 16, 17 weeks, although you can extend up to 6 months also. In cases of exclusive breastfed babies, you probably would only do 6 months, as I already said, 6 months of exclusive breastfeeding if the child is thriving well. Certain conditions where the child is probably on the lower scale in terms of the weight, or the child's needs are increased substantially and the mother is somehow not being able to cope up with the breast milk supply, and there the dilemma is between starting a formula milk and starting a solids. Then starting a solids is more natural and more logical. So that's why it's generally 6 months, but 4 to 6 months is okay in these situations.
I believe this is something which we should be visiting our doctor, get it evaluated, and then start this duration of 4 months, or could we do it at home as well?
No, I think you should always, any decision that you need to do, because you have a vaccine at around 3.5 months.
Right.
At that point of time, you can discuss that was the right time for me to start solids. At least you will have an idea. And then of course, like once you have those kind of milestones that you're looking forward to, weight gain or maybe the personal choice, then at least you're taking more scientific decision rather than just doing an arbitrary one.
Precisely. Thank you, sir. So one more thing, and us as moms and our generation, I believe we are flooded with information and we like researching, we like talking to a lot of people. And there's been a lot of buzz about baby-led weaning or traditional feeding. What is right? What is wrong? So what is it that you would want to advise us moms with respect to this?
So as a doctor, I look at any problem in two aspects. Is it natural?
Yeah.
And what is the science behind it? Okay. Now, if you look at any mammal for that matter, nobody teaches a cub how to eat. Nobody teaches a monkey how to jump.
Precisely.
And the calf starts eating grass looking at a mother. So there must be something inherently natural about babies being able to eat themselves. If it is something which is natural, like why are not humans using that kind of strategy? Okay, and that led some of the people in the West, mainly Australia, New Zealand, where they started this concept that the baby should lead the weaning, or should start looking at eating themselves. And you will see umpteen number of videos on the internet where you see, okay, baby led, the child starts putting things in the mouth, and that is possible. And I have so many patients and the parents who tried that kind of a concept, and it worked beautifully. The only thing that which it tests is that your patience, because the children may initially struggle to get onto the hold onto hand, and they will feel frustrated because they're not getting food, because they can't put it in the mouth, and they do not feel a little full. So sometimes it tests your patience as a mother, but it is a doable concept. People have been doing it, right? And when you look at the science behind it, people are more worried about whether if you give them something which is solid, it will choke.
Exactly.
Actually, there are two large studies on this concept of baby-led weaning where they looked at whether the children would choke, and surprisingly, the incidence choking was not different among the traditional weaning versus a baby-led weaning.
That's interesting.
If something which your hand can mush, the child can do it with his
gums as well.
Right, so you don't need a teeth for biting into a soft banana, for example. Like, you don't need a mango. You can do it with your hand. The child can do it with his gums. So you never choke on something which your gums can do it. You choke on things which are like nuts, for example. You need to bite into them. You choke on something like a hard candy, for example. Those are the only choking hazards The only flip side to this is, which I want parents who are trying it to look at to increase the protein content in the diet, fruit and vegetables like as this thing, and just monitor the weight, because sometimes, not always, some children who are baby-led weaning may have a little lag in their weight and the growth initially. So just do it under a supervision of a doctor.
Right. And that's such a brilliant concept which you just explained, and so simply, so beautifully, that if you could mash it with your hands, you could mash it with your gums as well. And as parents, we need to be aware, we need to be consulting our doctor, our expert, and then just doing it and constantly just evaluating it, and I believe having fun.
Absolutely. And food should be fun. People come to me and say, should we start solids? They're so anxious about it. And then the child also gets anxious because the mother is trying to feed the child. Your job right now, is to improve the relationship between the food and the baby.
The baby, yeah.
Right. So if he starts liking a food, if he starts liking the vegetable, he's going to have it for the rest of his life. So idea is to do something called a responsive feeding, which means that you look at a child and the child is looking in the other direction and no, he's not interested. It's like, I've just come back from a party and my family says, please finish the dinner, you did not eat in the morning. I don't know how to handle it.
I remember, and this is coming from my personal experience as well, that usually these days we are advised not to introduce salt or sugar under 1 year. And everyone at home was like, no, why are you not giving? Let's just give a cake, or let's just give kheer or suji ka halwa and things like those. Why is that so?
Do you take sugar?
Little.
Very little. Okay.
Very little, yeah.
Little. And if you have it too much, what is the feeling you have in yourself?
Lethargic is my personal preference. I do feel
I don't know saying it's like, so if you have like a lot of cake and a lot of sugar, so how would you feel at the end of the day?
Bloated, lethargic, not too good about the body.
And in the mind you would have guilt that you probably you should not have been having.
Oh yes.
Yes, like, sugar, we all understand. We celebrate with sugar, but it is not a health.
Right.
Right. As you said, bloated, you don't feel good. So if it was something great and like I have an apple, I will still feel good about it. But if I've had 2 cakes, I'll start like thinking that something. To put it in analogy, sugar is like the mind's first reaction. When I see something sugary here, my first instinct is to get the sugar in, because the brain loves to feed itself for survival. Okay,
Yeah.
But it is not health. It's carbs. We understand that if we have a preference for a sugar diet initially, very early in our lifestyle, we would tend to have a sugary diet later in life. Okay.
Understood.
And so it's about developing a sweet preference. So nobody is saying that you do not take sugar from the fruit. Apple is sweet and you have the distinct sweetness, and the banana has a distinct sweetness, mango has a distinct sweetness. All those things you are naturally taking perfectly fine. But if you're getting stuck to one particular taste, then you look forward for that taste in everything. And because your mind is like looking at that particular taste all the time, तो आपको दाल खानी है, then you say क्योंकि दाल is not sugary, then, and the child says no, I don't want to eat it, I just want to have it with something sweet दही के साथ. I'm depriving myself of a fair chance of eating a good healthy diet. So broccoli versus a cake. Now if you tell me, if I was not on a podcast, maybe I would also have done the same, taking a cake rather than a broccoli.
Right.
But we understand that eating broccoli is much more healthier for my long-term health. So that is the reason doctors discourage the use of sugar now up to 2 years and for the rest of your life.
Precisely. I believe all the habits which we are unlearning today as adults, that is what our doctors are telling, that do not just introduce that habit to the child so that the child wouldn't suffer later on.
Absolutely. Salt, say for example, is an additive. It is not nutrition.
Right.
Okay, so when we add too much of a salt in our diet, we tend to increase our chances of having onset of blood pressure problems. Imagine if I've taken too much of salt and after maybe 5 decades down the line I have to take a blood pressure problem. I'd rather shun the salt or keep it very minimal. The recommended use of salt even after 1 year of age is 3/4 of a teaspoon for
the entire day.
For the entire day for one child. And can you guess how much it is for you and me? We all are eating more than that, but it is 1 teaspoon. Anything more than 5 grams of salt in a day is not healthy.
So I am someone who would, even before tasting my food, I would add an extra salt and eat. I need to watch for that.
Nobody says don't eat apple. Nobody says don't eat banana. Right. But says don't add sugar or honey or jaggery for that matter. There's another myth people have is like, हम अपने बच्चे को sugar नहीं देते, हम गुड़ देते हैं. Like, it's like,
exactly.
Like, so it's like, holding a like
yeah,
this
like
or like this or this.
It's the same.
Sugar cane, jaggery and sugar. That's the whole sequence. It's the same thing.
Very beautifully put, sir. And the kind of explanation which you gave does make a lot of logical sense, and that's what I believe, that our minds are wired for some evidence, some hint, and the way you explained it makes a lot of sense for us as parents, and now we'll be more aware in making the choices, and that would certainly help all of us. So one very interesting question. A lot of moms were like, my child is super active, my child is eating, everything is fine, but he's very skinny. What is your advice to the mom on this?
On the lighter note, you have saved your son a lifetime membership of gym, and more importantly, you have saved your son a lifetime bills in the hospitals. So being thin is not a disease that we normally see, okay? And I understand where we come from. We were in an era 20-25 years back when we were studying protein, energy, malnutrition. Most of the children that we used to see when as students in our PGs were either protein malnourished or calorie malnourished. And now in the last 20 years, we are seeing the epidemic on the other side. The epidemic now is that we are having an epidemic of diabetes. We're having an epidemic of non-communicable disorders, blood pressure, obesity, PCOS in girls, fatty liver, and there was in fact a survey done at Institute of Liver and Biliary Sciences where they found that in the adolescent age group, 10 to 15% had fatty liver and 1% have actual blood pressure problems.
Like kids in the age group of 12 to 15 years.
And that gets doctors alarmed. Yeah. And we say you need to put on a lean body mass. You need to put on bone strength, you need to put on a muscle, you need to look at the organ growth, but not the fat growth. But in Indian concept, घर बड़ा होना चाहिए, गाड़ी भी बड़ी होनी चाहिए, but शरीर बड़ा नहीं होना चाहिए.
खाते पीते घर का बच्चा लगना चाहिए वाला जो.
Like we all understand all these problems are like, and when your children become little fat, and they would all be smaller, and usually if you see the trajectory of the growth, around 5 to 10 years is the time when they start putting on more fat if they've been fed a little bit more. Okay. But the anxiety still remains, is the child malnourished? Now, to answer that question on a scientific platform, I would suggest that the WHO has made charts. So you plot the growth and you get apps on the Play Store or the App Store where you plot every time you go to the doctor, just plot it on the growth chart, the weight, the height, the head circumference. What you are interested in looking at a trajectory of the growth, not like an absolute number. If I give you an example, if two people in the same company, one has a salary of say 1 lakh and other has a salary of 10 lakh, a 10% increase for each one of them is 1,10,000 and for him is 11. Now, if you see, an absolute number is different, but the growth is equal for both of them.
Precisely.
So that is the concept we use in growth charts. We look at a trajectory of growth which is different for different individuals.
What was your base? Where are you at? That is what
growth
matters.
Is an increment between 2 points for you, not for anyone else. So that's how we would want to look at it. And then we say, since you are looking at a bone growth, you're looking at a muscle growth. If you're getting taller, and after 2 years, if you're growing at 5 to 6 centimeter per year, that's a rough ballpark number, and that's where you are, then you are doing fine because your bone is growing, your muscle is growing, and then you do not need to look at weight. आप thin है तो अच्छा है, And if you're not growing, then you have to talk to the doctor, because if it is less than 5 centimeter a year, then there is some growth problem, whether it is related to disease or is related to your nutrition or something else, hormonal or something, but then there is a problem.
And again, as we consult our expert and they evaluate, and then they are the ones who are supposed to tell us what's happening, rather than us labeling the child that the child is weak or the child is skinny.
I love this analogy, and I think every parent should first, whenever they have a concern about the weight, doctor, what do you think about the growth? This should be the question, rather than going with the prefixed idea that my child is weak and then the discussion goes nowhere.
Sir, I completely resonate with you, but as a mom and representing all other moms in here, that even if we wish to believe, we are in a place which is surrounded by a lot of noise. Elders, padosi, aunties, friends, and we are also coping up, our hormones are coming back into play. So anything that comes in puts a question to us that are we even doing fine as a mom, or is the fault in me? So I believe us as moms, we want to just understand and want an answer. Is there any fault in my upbringing, or am I doing fine?
I completely understand what you're trying to say, and because for any parent for that matter, the most precious thing in their life is their child, and they want to make sure that they've looked after that child in the best possible way, so that you leave the best legacy for the future generation and the society, to bring that child into a beautiful adult. Now, this anxiety has to be countered by looking at an evidence, as I said, because people would come with all their opinions, and we are an opinionated world. So any situation where one person would favor one opinion, another would favor another opinion. Now, we need to look at what is the truth. The truth is in finding the growth charts, looking at the healthy habits of the child. Is the child falling sick? And do not take cold and cough as sickness. Sickness is like, you're getting hospitalized because of illness, you're getting antibiotics, for example. That means that you are really different from others. Or your growth chart is lagging behind, or you have some other disease coming up like jaundice or something. Now that's where there is something which is not right. Okay. On other hand, like, do not label your child based on people's perception.
Very beautifully put, sir, and certainly does help as a mom. So Dr. Sanjay has written an amazing book, and it's called Bundle of Joy. So what prompted you to write that book, sir?
When I was practicing over so many years, one patient of mine, a parent, came, sir, you talk science all the time. Can you make it a little bit more easier for the people to understand? And I realized that we all talk about the information flowing from a doctor to the patient, but it needs to be simplified. And when I wrote at that time, the internet was just flourishing in terms of Google information, but not a consolidated form. But at that point of time, I realized that the information should be truthful, should be scientific, and presented in a manner which the parents understand. And that led me to write that book. It took 2.5 years, because with the busy schedule that you are as a doctor, I used to get only early mornings to write that book along with my co-author. That's what led to the genesis of that book.
So people, I believe, apart from watching this episode, you should definitely get a copy of the book and have a very, very happy and a blessed parenthood. So it has been amazing having this conversation with you, sir. The way you've explained the concepts was brilliant. And last one, what is your message to the mom who's in the phase of raising up a child in the age group of, say, 0 to 12 months?
Well, my only message to all the moms, just be there for the child. The child would love your presence, and that is all that is asking for. It doesn't want you to be the perfect mom. We all trust God, and God would take care of the universe, the mom, the baby, and me. It just needs a little assistance from us, but it can run the world on its own. And to end it, I tell you, no to parents who are doctors. In two different a set of doctor parents would raise their children in the similar manner, because there's no Bible which has been written about what is the best book to follow.
Thank you.